Before Diana became the most photographed woman in the world, another Spencer woman had already spent 35 years inside the royal household. Cynthia Spencer did not arrive as a young bride pursued by cameras. She entered quietly in 1937 as a lady of the bedchamber to Queen Elizabeth, the future Queen Mother. She remained through war, widowhood, and a changing monarchy, serving until her death in 1972. Her name later passed from the court circular into something more lasting, a hospice in Northamptonshire, opened by the Queen Mother, with a day unit later opened by Diana herself. That history changes the usual story of Diana's marriage. When Lady Diana Spencer became engaged to Prince Charles, her family was not approaching the monarchy for the first time. The Spencers were returning to a world they had known for generations, a world in which service, proximity, and duty had already shaped family life. Cynthia had stood near the crown for 3.5 decades. Yet the closeness of one generation did not guarantee the safety of the next. This is not a story about a grandmother secretly preparing Diana to become a princess. Cynthia died when Diana was still a child, years before Charles proposed. There is no reliable evidence that she arranged the marriage, trained Diana for court, or foresaw the role her granddaughter would later occupy. The stronger story is quieter. Cynthia knew how royal service worked when it was structured, private, and protected by rules. Diana entered the same world under global exposure, where almost every weakness became public property. The difference begins not with Diana's wedding, but with 35 years of attendance. Cynthia Spencer's life shows what it meant for an aristocratic woman to remain close to the monarchy without becoming the center of it. Her duties required trust, continuity, and the discipline of being present without turning presence into personal power. She belonged inside the institution, but she did not control it. Cynthia Eleanor Beatrix Hamilton was born in 1897 into one of Britain's established aristocratic families. Her father later became the third Duke of Abercorn, and her upbringing placed her among the networks of title, estate, military service, and royal ceremony that shaped upper-class life. Marriage did not introduce Cynthia to rank. It connected her Hamilton background to another family with a long history near the crown. In 1919, she married Albert Edward John Spencer, known within the family as Jack. He would become the 7th Earl Spencer after inheriting the title in 1922. Their marriage joined the Hamilton and Spencer families at a time when aristocratic houses still carried clear public expectations. A title brought status, but it also brought land, employees, inherited property, local obligations, and the constant pressure of maintaining what earlier generations had passed down. Althorpe had already been home to the Spencer family for centuries. Its rooms, portraits, furniture, archives, and surrounding land represented continuity, but continuity was never free. Great estates required management. Family names required public service. Social position demanded appearances at weddings, funerals, charitable committees, county events, and royal occasions. Cynthia entered a family whose identity was tied not only to privilege, but to the performance of responsibility. The marriage produced 2 children who would connect Cynthia directly to Diana's story. Her daughter Anne was born first. Her son, Edward John Spencer, followed in 1924 and later became the 8th Earl Spencer. He was Diana's father. Through him, Cynthia became the paternal grandmother of Diana Sarah Jane and Charles Spencer. But when Cynthia's public role began, Diana was still decades away from birth. In 1937, Cynthia was appointed a Lady of the Bedchamber to Queen Elizabeth. The title can be misunderstood by modern listeners. It did not mean that Cynthia was a domestic servant in the ordinary sense, nor did it mean she possessed political authority. A Lady of the Bedchamber was a senior female attendant within the Queen's household drawn from aristocratic society and trusted to support the sovereign's wife through public duties, ceremonies, travel correspondence, and the rhythms of court life. The word bedchamber came from an older royal world in which access to the monarch's private rooms carried status. By the 20th century, the role had evolved, but the central principle remained: trusted proximity. Cynthia was expected to be available, discreet, socially capable, and familiar with the codes of the household. She had to know when to speak, when to withdraw, how to accompany, and how to make complicated occasions appear effortless. That kind of service was not glamorous in the way later royal celebrity would be glamorous. It depended on repetition. There were official engagements, private gatherings, ceremonies, periods of travel, and long stretches in which loyalty was measured by reliability rather than publicity. The work was visible enough to matter, but usually too restrained to dominate a newspaper front page. Cynthia's success rested partly on not becoming the story. Her role was measured not by one celebrated action, but by years of attendance through repeated engagements, correspondence, travel, and ceremonial obligations. Its significance lay in continuity. The same trusted woman remained beside Queen Elizabeth before and after widowhood, across national crisis and institutional transition, without becoming the story. Her appointment came at a moment of rapid change. King Edward VIII had abdicated in December 1936. His younger brother became King George VI, and the former Duchess of York became Queen Elizabeth. The new king and queen had not expected the throne to arrive in that way. Their household had to adjust quickly to a role defined by national duty and constitutional pressure. Cynthia entered Queen Elizabeth's service in the first full year of that new reign. She did not join a settled court resting comfortably in tradition. She joined a household learning how to carry the monarchy after abdication had shaken public confidence. That does not mean she shaped royal policy or advised on constitutional decisions. It means the service she offered began during a period when calm, routine, and trustworthy attendance carried unusual value. The distinction matters. Proximity to the Queen could create influence in a social sense. Cynthia would have observed the habits of the household, understood its expectations, and moved among people whose names appeared throughout national life. But a Lady of the Bedchamber was not an elected official, cabinet advisor, or hidden political strategist. Her closeness was personal and ceremonial, not a license to direct the monarchy. This is one of the first lessons Cynthia's story offers about royal life. Being near power is not the same as possessing it. A woman may stand beside a queen, travel in the same circle, and understand the private rhythm of the court while remaining outside the decisions that shape the institution. Cynthia's role required access, but also boundaries. Those boundaries protected the monarchy and defined her place within it. For the Spencer family, her appointment reinforced an association that already existed. The family's history included politicians, courtiers, military officers, and office holders. Cynthia's husband would later be known for involvement with schools, charities, hospitals, and museums. Their son John would also serve within the royal household before inheriting the earldom. Diana therefore grew up in a family for whom court connection was not an exotic fantasy. It was part of the family record, yet family familiarity can be misleading. Knowing how the court works from a supporting position is different from surviving as a central royal figure. Cynthia's role was defined by service to one woman. Diana's later role would be defined by marriage to the heir, public expectation, motherhood, press competition, and the emotional health of a union watched across the world. The two women entered related systems, but they occupied completely different levels of exposure. Cynthia's early years in the household soon passed into the crisis of war. In September 1939, Britain entered the Second World War. Queen Elizabeth remained in Britain with the king and their daughters, and the royal family became part of the national effort to project steadiness under threat. Buckingham Palace was bombed. The king and queen visited damaged communities, hospitals, factories, and troops. Cynthia's service continued through those years. The surviving public record contains no private wartime conversations between her and the queen, and no evidence that she personally guided Queen Elizabeth through fear. What remains documented is substantial enough. Cynthia stayed within the household while the monarchy operated under the pressure of war. Continuity in such a period was not empty ceremony. Royal engagements had to be organized. Clothes, travel, schedules, receptions, correspondence, and personal attendance continued under altered conditions. The Queen's public image of resolve depended on a household capable of supporting relentless duty. Cynthia belonged to that structure, one of the women whose reliability helped private arrangements hold while public responsibilities expanded. For aristocratic women of Cynthia's generation, service often operated through networks that rarely attracted full public credit. They chaired committees, supported hospitals, organized charitable work, attended county functions, and served royal women in roles that combined companionship with obligation. Their influence was often indirect. Their names appeared beneath larger names, attached to institutions rather than dramatic personal narratives. This may be one reason Cynthia is remembered less vividly than Diana. Diana's life unfolded in an age of television, mass photography, satellite news, and aggressive tabloids. Cynthia's service belonged to an older culture in which discretion was treated as a qualification. The less she disclosed, the more suitable she appeared for continued trust. War also transformed Queen Elizabeth's public standing. She and George VI became symbols of national endurance, and the Queen's visits to bombed communities strengthened her connection with the public. Cynthia served beside a woman whose royal identity was becoming emotionally important to the country. Yet she remained behind the image, part of the support system rather than the face on the poster. The relationship lasted beyond victory. In the post-war years, the king's health weakened, and the burden on the royal family shifted. The monarchy faced a changed Britain with economic strain, imperial contraction, and growing pressure to justify old institutions in a modern democratic society. Cynthia remained in place, providing the rare asset that royal households value deeply: continuity across changing circumstances. Then on the 6th of February 1952, King George VI died at Sandringham. His elder daughter became Queen Elizabeth II. His widow, Queen Elizabeth, adopted the title by which later generations knew her best: Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. For Cynthia, The death changed the formal position of the woman she served, but it did not end the service. She continued as Lady of the Bedchamber to the Queen Mother. The household moved into a new phase, no longer supporting a reigning queen consort, but a royal widow with an extensive program of duties and a powerful public identity of her own. The Queen Mother moved to Clarence House and continued charitable, military, and overseas work. Cynthia remained among the women trusted to support that life. The change from queen to Queen Mother could have marked the conclusion of Cynthia's court service. Instead, it demonstrated the personal continuity at the heart of the role. She had been appointed during the reign of George VI and remained after his death, not because she had gained political authority, but because trust had survived the transition. 35 years is easy to state and difficult to imagine. It covered the aftermath of abdication, the Second World War, the death of a king, the accession of a young queen, and the first 2 decades of the new Elizabethan age. Governments changed. Britain changed. The public meaning of monarchy changed. Cynthia's title remained attached to the same woman. That long service suggests discipline more clearly than intimacy. The Queen Mother's continued appointment of Cynthia supports an inference of trust, but duration cannot supply invented conversations or private feelings neither woman recorded publicly. The evidence lies in continuity itself. Cynthia appeared in portraits and formal photographs, often described simply as a lady-in-waiting to the Queen Mother and wife of the 7th Earl Spencer. Modern viewers sometimes focus on her resemblance to Diana. Certain photographs do show features that later generations associate with her granddaughter: the set of the eyes, the shape of the face, a familiar expression. But resemblance can become a trap. A face does not prove a shared personality. It cannot show that Cynthia possessed Diana's emotional openness, that Diana inherited Cynthia's private instincts, or that both women would have reacted to royal pressure in the same way. Family likeness is visible. Character inheritance is far more difficult to establish. The stronger comparison comes from documented actions. Cynthia sustained a long commitment to royal service. Diana later built a public life around repeated charitable engagement, hospital visits, work connected to serious illness, and physical contact with people who society often kept at a distance. Those actions occurred in very different eras and under different conditions. They do not prove that one woman's qualities passed directly into the other. They do show 2 Spencer women using royal proximity through service rather than political power. Inside her family, Cynthia was the wife of an earl, the mother of Anne and John, and eventually the grandmother of a growing Spencer generation. Althorpe was not merely a backdrop. It was a home governed by inherited expectations, family tensions, household staff, land, money, and the obligation to preserve an estate larger than any one individual. Diana was born in 1961, when Cynthia had already served Queen Elizabeth and the Queen Mother for nearly a quarter of a century. During Diana's childhood, Cynthia's habits of attendance and discretion were already deeply established. Yet Cynthia died in December 1972, when Diana was 11. Their relationship belonged to Diana's early life, not to the years in which she was deciding whether to marry Charles. Later history has encouraged a more dramatic version, but the dates place a clear limit on what Cynthia could have done. It is tempting to imagine her explaining palace rules to Diana, identifying her as future royal material, or preparing her for life at court. No reliable evidence supports that scene. Cynthia did not live to see Diana's engagement, wedding, or transformation into Princess of Wales. She could not have known how the marriage would unfold. She did not witness the press pursue Diana, the public comparison with Camilla, the separation, the interviews, or the collapse of trust between Diana and the institution. Any claim that Cynthia predicted those events would be fiction. What Diana did inherit was a family environment in which the monarchy was familiar. Her grandmother served the Queen Mother. Her father also held court appointments. The Spencer estate stood within a social world where royal visits and aristocratic connections were normal rather than mythical. Diana could be inexperienced as a young woman while still coming from a family with institutional familiarity. That difference helps explain one of the tragedies of her later story. Family connection may have made the match appear more natural. The Spencers were not outsiders. Diana had the correct ancestry, the correct social background, and a family history of royal service. Those facts could create confidence that she would understand the system. They could not guarantee that the system would understand her. Cynthia's role had clear limits. She was appointed to serve another woman. Her duties were defined. The Queen Mother's household provided rank, routine, and a structure within which discretion was rewarded. Diana entered through marriage, where public duty and private intimacy could not be separated so easily. Her success as Princess of Wales depended not only on protocol, but on the condition of her marriage. Cynthia could withdraw behind the person she served. Diana could not. Cameras followed Diana's clothes, expressions, pregnancies, friendships, tears, and silences. Every public appearance became evidence in a larger story. The institution that had given Cynthia a protected supporting position placed Diana at the exposed center. This is why Cynthia's 35 years should not be used to suggest that Diana ought to have adapted more easily. The roles were fundamentally different. Cynthia's long success does not prove that the court was always kind, nor does Diana's struggle prove that she rejected duty. One woman operated within a defined household office. The other lived inside a marriage that became a global drama. Cynthia's death in 1972 ended her direct service, but it did not end her connection to the Queen Mother or to Northamptonshire. In the same year, a committee was formed in Northampton to provide cancer relief and raise funds for continuing care. Under the leadership of Dr. Ben Jollies, the project gathered enough support to build a 16-bed inpatient facility. Cynthia's husband, the 7th Earl Spencer, agreed to become patron of the committee. The new institution was named Cynthia Spencer House in memory of his late wife. The decision moved Cynthia's name from court service into local care. Instead of surviving only through photographs, titles, or family trees, her name became attached to a place designed for patients and families facing life-limiting illness. That legacy matters because it is concrete. Royal histories often measure women through marriages, beauty, scandal, or proximity to famous men. Cynthia's name endured through a hospice. The institution did not claim that she had founded it or personally designed its services. It honored her memory by connecting it with care in the county where the Spencer family held a long public presence. By the end of 1975, the committee had raised enough money for the inpatient facility. On the 15th of May, 1976, Cynthia Spencer Hospice opened. The woman who performed the opening was Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, whom Cynthia had served from 1937 until her death. The image is powerful without invented dialogue. Cynthia was gone. Her husband stood behind the project as patron. The Queen Mother came to open a facility carrying the name of the woman who had spent 35 years in her household. The event made visible a relationship that court service usually kept discreet. It would be easy to describe the opening as proof of private affection. What it clearly demonstrated was continuing connection and public respect. The Queen Mother's presence joined Cynthia's royal service to a local institution of care and showed that her name retained meaning beyond her death. The hospice was also part of a wider change in how Britain approached end-of-life care. It was described by the organization as one of the country's early modern hospices. Its purpose was not ceremonial. Patients required specialist support, families required guidance, and local fundraising remained essential. Cynthia's name became attached to work measured not by court rank, but by relief offered during difficult final stages of life. This may be the most valuable part of her legacy. Cynthia's story did not end in a confession, feud, or public collapse. It continued through rooms built for care. The institution allowed a woman known for private service to be remembered through another form of service, rooted in community rather than palace hierarchy. 9 years after the Queen Mother opened the original facility, the connection reached Diana. The Cynthia Spencer House Trust had supported a campaign to build a day unit. On the 29th of March, 1985, Diana, Princess of Wales, opened it. By then, Diana's life had changed almost beyond recognition. She had married Charles in 1981, become Princess of Wales, given birth to William and Harry, and emerged as one of the most recognizable women on earth. Her public engagements were analyzed for clothes, gestures, mood, marriage, and symbolism. Yet on that March day, she stood at a facility carrying her grandmother's name. The moment requires no supernatural interpretation. No reliable source records Diana saying that Cynthia guided her or that she consciously continued a family mission. The documented action already contains the emotional point. A granddaughter who had entered royal life opened a day unit named for the grandmother who had served beside the Queen Mother before her. 3 generations of the story met there. Cynthia's name stood on the institution. The Queen Mother had opened the original hospice. Diana opened the day unit. The connection was not based on rumor, resemblance, or retrospective fantasy. It was recorded in the history of the hospice itself. For Diana, hospital and care-related engagements would become central to her public identity. She showed a willingness to enter clinical environments, speak directly with patients, and make forms of suffering visible. The 1985 opening came before some of her most famous humanitarian work, but it fits the pattern that later became unmistakable. The day unit does not establish that Diana's approach to service came directly from Cynthia. Diana's experiences, temperament, staff, patronages, and change in public role all contributed to the way she worked. What the opening does provide is a documented point of contact between the two women. Diana did not merely resemble Cynthia in a photograph. She performed an act of public service at a place carrying Cynthia's name. The difference between their visibility is striking. Cynthia's service unfolded behind the Queen Mother, repeated over 35 years with limited public narration. Diana's opening of the day unit took place under the attention attached to the Princess of Wales. A single appearance by Diana could generate more public imagery than years of Cynthia's household work. This difference altered the risks. Cynthia's value at court depended on discretion, and discretion kept much of her life beyond public reach. Diana's value to the monarchy increasingly depended on public appeal. The more powerful that appeal became, the harder it was to contain within the old expectations of deference and silence. Cynthia represented continuity. Diana represented emotional immediacy. Cynthia supported a royal woman whose public image had been built across decades of marriage, war, widowhood, and service. Diana became an image before she had time to develop the private stability that such a role might require. Their lives, therefore, reveal two different kinds of closeness to the crown. Cynthia was close through appointment. Diana was close through marriage. Cynthia had a formal place in another woman's household. Diana's position reached into succession, motherhood, media, and the future of the monarchy. Cynthia's role could survive private uncertainty because its terms were professional and ceremonial. Diana's role became unstable when her marriage became unstable. There is a painful irony in the family history. The Spencer connection to court may have made Diana appear safe to the institution. Her grandmother had served the Queen Mother for 35 years. Her family had moved around the monarchy for generations. Diana came from one of Britain's best-known aristocratic houses. On paper, she belonged. But belonging by ancestry is not the same as being protected emotionally. A family can understand etiquette without understanding what a 19-year-old woman will face when placed at the center of a royal marriage. It can know palace corridors without knowing how global fame will alter every relationship inside them. Cynthia's generation treated service as a structure of obligations. Diana's generation entered an age when monarchy was also mass entertainment. By the 1980s and 1990s, newspapers competed not merely to report royal duties, but to expose private conflict. Diana's popularity intensified the competition. The old boundary between household and audience weakened. This does not mean Cynthia's court was free of gossip, pressure, or private pain. It means the mechanisms of exposure were different. Cynthia could perform decades of duty without becoming a daily emotional spectacle. Diana could not attend an event, wear a dress, or lower her eyes without interpretation following. The comparison also protects Cynthia from being reduced to a preview of Diana. She deserves to be understood in her own context. She was born a Hamilton, married into the Spencers, became Countess Spencer, raised children, managed family responsibilities, and served Queen Elizabeth and then the Queen Mother for 35 years. Her life did not exist merely to foreshadow her granddaughter. Her record remains the evidence. 35 years of service, followed by a local legacy of care. At the same time, Diana gives modern audiences a reason to look back. Without Diana, Cynthia might remain a name beneath formal portraits. Through Diana, viewers ask how long the Spencers had been near the monarchy and whether that history shaped the marriage to Charles. Cynthia provides the clearest answer. The connection was real, deep, and institutional. Its protective value was limited. What did Cynthia directly teach Diana? The evidence is too thin for a confident answer. Diana was 11 when Cynthia died. Memories may have remained, family stories certainly existed, and Cynthia's position would have formed part of the Spencer identity. But no reliable record allows us to describe a program of instruction or claim that Cynthia trained her granddaughter in royal behavior. Why then does Cynthia matter to Diana's story? Because she reveals the distance between familiarity and preparation. The Spencer family knew the monarchy socially and institutionally. That knowledge may have made Diana's entrance look natural to others. It did not give her control over Charles's feelings, the palace's priorities, or the press. Cynthia also matters because her legacy avoided the pattern that consumed Diana. Cynthia's name survived through a hospice rather than a scandal. The Queen Mother's opening of the facility and Diana's opening of the day unit created a chain of documented public service. In that chain, royal connection produced something local and practical. The lesson is painfully familiar. A long marriage, a respected name, and proximity to powerful people do not remove vulnerability. Duty can give life structure, but it does not guarantee emotional safety. Families can pass down expectations more easily than protection. Cynthia's life appears orderly because the public record is orderly. Appointment, service, family, death, memorial. Diana's appears fractured because those fractures were recorded in real time. Privacy should not be confused with peace or publicity with failure. Less is known about Cynthia's inner life, partly because her era did not demand that she expose it. The two women were also separated by their relationship to the person at the center. Cynthia served the Queen Mother without being tied to her through marriage. Her loyalty could be expressed through attendance and discretion. Diana's loyalty was expected to function across public service, private affection, sexual fidelity, motherhood, and constitutional symbolism. When those expectations collided, no clear job description could protect her. Cynthia's 35 years beside the Queen Mother therefore represent both continuity and limitation. They show that a Spencer woman could be trusted at the highest social level for decades. They do not show that the monarchy would know how to respond when another Spencer woman became more famous than almost everyone around her. The hospice makes that contrast tangible. Its history records names, dates, openings, fundraising, beds, and a day unit. It provides evidence that can be verified. The emotional history of royal marriages is less stable, shaped by competing memories and public argument. Cynthia's legacy rests on an institution that still serves families. In 1976, the Queen Mother opened the original 16-bed facility. In 1985, Diana opened the day unit. Between those dates, Diana had moved from an aristocratic teenager to Princess of Wales. The hospice became one of the few places where her new public role visibly connected with her grandmother's earlier royal service. The 1985 opening became the emotional center of Cynthia's legacy. Diana did not need to claim her grandmother's personality or repeat her life. By opening the day unit, she placed her own royal service beside a family name already connected to duty and care. The act joined the generations without pretending the two women had shared the same experience. Cynthia's court service was built on staying near the center without becoming it. Diana's tragedy was that she became the center whether the institution wanted her there or not. The public watched her marriage through expressions, photographs, interviews, and leaks. The qualities that made her valuable to the monarchy also made her difficult to manage. The family history adds another layer. When Charles proposed to Diana, the Spencers were not entering an unknown social order. Cynthia's service had ended less than a decade earlier. The Queen Mother knew the family. The genealogies, titles, estates, and court appointments all suggested compatibility, yet institutional familiarity could not answer the most basic private question: whether Charles and Diana could build a secure marriage. No grandmother's record of service could solve that. Cynthia's loyalty belonged to her own life and role. It could not be inherited like jewelry. Diana had to enter the monarchy under conditions Cynthia had never faced. With a husband whose emotional history was already complicated and a press culture prepared to turn private uncertainty into public drama. Cynthia's story does not prove that Diana was destined for the crown. Destiny removes choice and disguises contingency. Diana's path depended on timing, family background, Charles's search for a bride, public expectations, and decisions made by several people. Cynthia's role made the Spencer connection visible. It did not write the ending. There's also no evidence that the palace tried to erase Cynthia. Her portraits remain in national collections. The hospice bears her name. The Queen Mother opened it, and Diana later returned in an official capacity. Cynthia is less famous because her work was supporting, repetitive, and discreet, not because a campaign removed her from history. Her relative obscurity may tell us something about how history rewards royal women. Those who create scandal or suffer publicly are remembered in detail. Those who attend, support, and maintain continuity can disappear into titles such as Lady in Waiting. Cynthia's 35 years challenge that imbalance. Service on that scale deserves more than a footnote. At the end of Cynthia's life, she could look back on a role that had survived war, bereavement, accession, and social change. She had served Queen Elizabeth as Queen Consort and continued when she became Queen Mother. The appointment lasted until Cynthia's death. Few modern careers remain attached to one person and institution for so long. After death, her name passed into care. A committee built a hospice. Her husband became patron. The Queen Mother opened the first facility. Diana opened the day unit. This sequence is stronger than speculation because every stage left a public trace. What joined Cynthia and Diana beyond appearance was not a proven inheritance of personality. It was documented service. Cynthia spent decades supporting a royal woman. Diana used her royal position in public engagements that repeatedly brought attention to illness, care, and people outside the comfortable center of society. Their methods, exposure, and emotional worlds were different, but both histories contain action rather than resemblance alone. The final contrast remains difficult. Cynthia's closeness to the monarchy was stable because it had limits. Diana's closeness became dangerous because it reached into every part of her identity. Cynthia could be trusted without being consumed by public ownership. Diana became a national and international figure whose private needs could not be separated from the institution's image. 35 years at court did not create a shield for the Spencer family. It created familiarity, status, and a record of service. Those things helped explain why Diana appeared suitable. They could not guarantee that she would be understood, loved, or protected once she entered the royal marriage. Cynthia Spencer should therefore be remembered neither as a hidden architect of Diana's future, nor merely as a face resembling her granddaughter. She was a courtier in her own right, a countess, a mother, and a woman whose name became attached to end-of-life care in Northamptonshire. Her story stands on documented work. When Diana opened the day unit on the 29th of March, 1985, she completed no mystical circle. She performed a public duty at a place carrying her grandmother's name. Yet the image remains deeply moving. The granddaughter, now Princess of Wales, standing within an institution opened by the Queen Mother and dedicated to the memory of the woman who had served her. That moment contains the whole story. The Spencers had been close to the crown long before Diana. Cynthia's service proved the depth of that connection. The hospice proved that her legacy extended beyond ceremony. Diana's appearance proved that the family link, had returned in a new and far more visible form. But history also shows the limit of inherited closeness. Cynthia knew the discipline of a defined role. Diana entered a marriage without the same boundaries. One woman's 35 years of trusted attendance could not protect another woman from loneliness inside the same royal world. Cynthia was the grandmother on the Spencer side. On Diana's maternal side stood another woman with an even more intimate connection to the Queen Mother. Ruth Fermoy served in her household, watched Diana move toward Charles, and according to later accounts, came to fear that the young bride might not be suited to royal life. Her story would bring the warning closer to the wedding itself.